Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing my VCT Pacific Week 1, Stage 1 Pickems and Power Rankings. We'll start with the Power Rankings here. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Really helps me out. You can also go check out my other videos. I just did a transfer window, like roster moves grade video, just grading every move that was made in this past transfer window, or at least everyone that's been like reported on or whatnot. So you can go check that out. As well as stay tuned for all of my other videos. I have an Americas one coming out after this, and an EMEA one a little bit later, I believe, because I think that one is starting after. I'm not exactly sure. I'd have to look. But yeah, today I'm just going to go through, rank all 12 teams in a power ranking, and then go through and pick every game from week 1. If you guys really do enjoy this, you can also go check out my Twitter. Link is in the description. I did my player rankings out on that, so you can go check those out. I just did my Pacific ones like the other day, so if you're interested where I would rank specific players, not necessarily teams, you can go check that out. I do just want to talk about a little bit of a change to this series. So last year I did 2 videos a week, separated these into 1 power rankings, 1 predictions. I am just gonna do 1 of each for each region. So I'll do Pacific power rankings and predictions, and then America's power rankings and predictions, EMEA power rankings and predictions is 3 separate videos. So that's 3 videos a week rather than 6. So maybe I'll sneak another video in there at some point, but this is what it's going to be for the remainder of this year. So yeah, let's get right into it. So starting at number 12, I have Zeta Division. I don't think that's super surprising. I do think that they did have a rough draw at kickoff playing against Paper X and Nongshim. Not necessarily that Nongshim is like the best team, but I do think it is a little bit difficult for a young team like Zeta to come in their first game and play against such a high-paced team like Nongshim is, and a team that does so much crazy stuff like they do. So I do think there is a little bit of a matchup thing there. I do think some of their tier 2 players coming in were a little bit disappointing, like XDLL specifically. I think he wasn't like as dominant as I thought he would be. Scioto was fine. I don't think he was super great, like maybe he was in the offseason matches. And then CLZ, he's IGLing, playing with a young team. He's young himself. I guess he's inexperienced himself, I'll say. Playing against teams like Nongshim and Paper X, it will be kind of hard to frag in some of these games as well. But I did kind of expect him to be a bit better. But I do think Depp and Sugar Zero were fine. Sugar a little bit less so, but I do think Depp was pretty decent in their games. I think this is probably the best 12th place team in any region right now. So maybe the glue name of the tier here isn't entirely accurate, but I do think it is fair to place Zeta in 12th. And then my other team in this bottom tier is Global Esports. I don't think that they would be in this tier if they were playing with their main roster. I just think they need Patrick Hu back. He looked pretty good in the offseason matches that they played, and Darion is just not it, especially when he's playing Sentinel and Udotan is now on Duelist, which I just don't think Udotan is a good Duelist player, personally. Like, I've watched him play a little bit of flex, like Gecko stuff like that, and then the Sentinel that he's been playing on Global in the offseason events, and both of those were really good from him. So once they get Patrick back, he'll probably be playing the Duelist, and then Udotan will move back to Sentinel, and I think this roster itself will be looking a lot better. But I do think Crystal was pretty good. That was very nice to see. I think Poppy was pretty good as well. Kelly S was a little bit disappointing. I didn't think the mid-rounding was super great in the offseason, and it didn't look that much better in the offseason, or not in the offseason games, in the kickoff matches. So there's a little bit of concern there with him being able to mid-round, but also he's playing with a young, inexperienced team, and he's playing with a sub on his team. So it is a little bit harder to call with that. So I will give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt and maybe wait to say, hey, this guy needs to be replaced. Maybe wait until Patrick who comes back. Maybe that would maybe be in stage 2 as well. So that'd be kind of when I'll get a hard read on how good this team will be into the future. But for right now, I don't think they're going to be very good, just because they're still playing with a sub who is a significant downgrade from their main roster. All right, next up, and this shouldn't be last tier. I mean, these are just two teams that I think will kind of be okay, probably miss out on playoffs, but not quite like be the worst team in the league. Like, they're not going to be terrible. And that'll start with Boom, who I have moving up 2 spots from the number 12 slot. Just another team that had a rough draw um, in like this opening couple games. They played against T1, who ended up getting second in Pacific, looked a little bit sloppy throughout the kickoff, but ended up winning Bangkok, obviously. And then Nongshim, another team where it's like, you're a young team playing against a super hyper aggressive style in Nongshim. You're gonna get caught out sometimes. But they did get map wins against both teams. Now, the one that Boom got against Nongshim was on Bind. It definitely was a map from Nongshim. I will say that. They did not play well in that game, but I mean, Boom's both wins, I believe, were on Bind against T1 and against Nongshim. Not either team's best map, but I do think both were good maps from Boom, and I think they could get some upset map wins over some teams, but overall, I would not see them beating most of the teams above them, strictly because I just don't think they have the firepower to contend with like even like the top 8 teams in Pacific. Like, they could probably contend with my next team here, but other than that, I wouldn't really put them even in the same category as any of the other teams in terms of just roster talent and firepower, which is to be expected from an Ascension team who didn't make a ton of changes. Even though I do think DOS9 looked pretty good for Boom in their games. He didn't look amazing by any means, but he definitely looked pretty good. Then, in my other team here, I have Team Secret, another team that just does not have the roster talent right now to contend at a super high level. There is a chance that this team makes playoffs. They consistently do that in Pacific, but they've kept the same roster for so long, made a couple changes here and there, but overall are largely the same team. And I think the rest of Pacific has gotten a lot better. So I think this team needs to make large scale changes to their roster at some point soon. Maybe they ride it out for the rest of the year and make changes at the end of the year. But I think everybody but Envy, maybe Wild Oreo, I think everybody else needs to go. 2G, Jeremy, and Jesse Vass are just not good enough players to make international events and contend at international events with, if that's what they want to do. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think they'll be better than they were at kickoff. They were pretty bad, but I don't think they'll be maybe the team that they've been within Pacific for the past few years. Then onto this what is Pacific tier, which I think is just a bunch of teams that are pretty good and should be pretty good within Pacific, but you don't know exactly where most of these teams are going to land within this tier. And that'll start with RRQ. I think they are the epitome of this tier. Being really good again in another tournament run, but just not making it that far in the end. Like, they have good wins over DFM. I guess that one wasn't that great. And Secret. But against Gen G and Nongshim, just kind of not being able to close out these games. I think they do need to lean into more of the meta stuff. I think they had a decent read on it. Played a lot of Vise, played some Teo as well. I think they played Teo. Maybe I was looking at the wrong team just there. Maybe they didn't. But I do think they need to lean a little bit more into it. Play some of the Teo, play some more Breach, and especially lean into more Yoru. I think they were really good with the Vise, and I think Zephyro looked pretty good on that role. But I do think the rest of the meta stuff they need to lean into a little bit more. And then I think the most important thing for this team is they need to figure out how to close games. And I think that starts with players like Estrella, who overall, I mean, he's been a decent caller for this team. He hasn't been amazing, but I think in the end, it's going to come down to whether he like gives this team the calls to close out games, gets them good rounds, kind of if they're up pretty big, decides, hey, we're gonna just save all our ults, kind of pile it in, and just win the map. I think that didn't they choke the Haven against Genji? Yeah, they were up 12, or I mean, I guess 10-12 isn't that much of a choke, but like, I don't know, man. I feel like they should have won one of these games. Obviously, the Nongshim game was fucking insane. They did close out Fracture. Lotus, I mean, was probably the best map of all of like the kickoff stage, including Bangkok. Maybe one of the finals maps that went to overtime. You could say that that was better, but like they just kind of fell apart on Pearl. They ended up losing what is this 6 rounds in a row to lose to Nongshim on Pearl map 3 after losing that map, which is kind of reasonable because it went 22-20. But I think overall this team just needs to figure out how to close games. That's kind of been their issue for, I mean, the entire time they've been in franchising, really. Maybe outside of the first year where they were kind of a weird team that wasn't very good, but had some nice ideas. But yeah, then moving on to the team that they lost to, Nongshim. I think this team might get a little bit overrated because of their wins that they had. They won against Zeta, Boom, and RRQ, which is kind of beating some inexperienced teams. Like they lost when they played DRX and they lost when they played Talon. Two teams that, I mean, DRX is young and this was in DRX's first game. And Talon, who was very sloppy. I I would expect a team that is very good, or that is like in that like maybe top 4 in Pacific, to close out those games and beat DRX and Talon. But they did take maps off both teams, so I will give them credit for that. But against Zeta, Boom, and RRQ, like they're just kind of beating some of the more inexperienced teams and some of the lower level teams with a super aggressive style, kind of being able to just overpower the teams. I do think this team does, like, as opposed to maybe a Boom or a Secret or something like that, this team absolutely has the roster talent to be one of these like top 3, top 4 teams in Pacific. Like Danby and Persia are incredible. Francis and Ivy looked really good. Margaret, I didn't really notice as much in the games that I watched of them. I would like him to maybe perform a little bit better, but he is trying to play a little bit more Vise and stuff, so I can understand how he's not quite there. But this team did lean into Teo quite a bit. I think they could lean even more into that kind of stuff. Maybe play a little bit of Yoru. I don't. My issue with the Yoru with this team is it kind of changes their style a little bit because I don't think you can play that super high paced style with the Yoru. I think it's a little bit more of a work the map kind of thing than maybe a Neon is. But I do think they need to lean a little bit more into the Teo and Breach and what's it called? Vise. I think they need to lean into those agents a little bit more across all the maps outside of maybe Icebox. I don't know how that map is going to shake up in terms of the meta. But I think overall they should be pretty good. Uh, I just don't know how much better they'll get. I think they'll kind of hover around this like 6th, 7th place spot in Pacific, but not go that much higher, in my opinion. I just don't think the team has enough experience or like meta flexibility to be like the best team in Pacific per se. Then Talon as my next team at 6th. Yeah, I just need to do the math in my head because I don't have like the list on a different monitor. But I think the 2 pickups that this team made, Tai and Kilua, are very good. Tai coming from their what's it called? Their academy roster. I had literally like just watched him, then I saw the news on Twitter that he was joining the team, or like a couple days later. So I thought he was pretty good. I watched Kilua that same day. I thought he was pretty good on that flex role. But these pickups will force Primy probably onto the duelist role, which does concern me a little bit. Yes, his duelist has statistically looked good. Like, he has been the best performing player on Talon. Usually when he plays the duelist, he hits some nice clips and all that stuff. But I do think he plays a little bit of a selfish style on the duelist role. And his raise hasn't looked super great. And also, like, he can't really play the Neon. I would not put him on Yoru because of like how his more hard entry duelists outside of the Jet have looked. And overall, just I don't know. I don't see him as a flexible player. I mean, maybe the Waylay will look good with him. I could definitely see that. But I don't know. I do have my concerns with that. I do think he has been very overrated on the duelist in the past, and I think that might come back to bite Talon if they kind of like go hard in on Primy. Also, Jip Boys will be moving to more of a sentinel role. I do very much believe that he'll be pretty good on that, as he's been very good on the smokes for them. But it is a role change that could be a little bit weird for them. And then yeah, I think Cruz overall is just a player that has to be better. I don't think he's been bad by any means, but he has to be like a very good caller in Pacific, like that top four, top three caller to kind of get this team over the hump and get them back to making international events, which is probably where they should be at this point. Then at my last spot in this what is Pacific tier, I have DFM. I think if you watched my channel for any time, pretty much from last year, I think you would expect me to have DFM at the top of this tier. Like if you gave me these four teams, where would you think that I would place them? I would assume most people would predict DFM at the top of this, especially with that upset win that they had over Paper Rex, which was insane. I thought they looked pretty good against RRQ. They probably should have closed out that game. Oh, wow. Okay, wait. I just did not remember any of that. They got destroyed on the other maps. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, they played like ass on Pearl. That comp was terrible. But yeah, I guess that game did lean into some of my concerns with Gien overall in terms of not being able to play really anything outside of the Clove. But once they played Global Esports, they looked pretty good in that game. I thought overall they played some nice comps. Akame looked really good. May looked really good. Kind of the players that you'd expect to be looking good. Jinbong looked pretty good on the Astra. And then in that Paper X game, I do think some of it was just Paper X not being very good, and kind of just getting owned. But Gien looked amazing on the Omen on Abyss. He was destroying Jing in mid multiple times. That was really funny. Like if you, I'm sure some people saw the clips of him just like jumping through his own Omen smoke on top mid on Abyss with a shorty and just killing Jing a bunch of times. He had 5 first kills in that map to win them Abyss. And then Pearl, I think they had an incredible anti-strat, played a lot better of a comp. This KO Teo stuff alongside the Jet, I think was really good. My concerns with this team is a little bit with the meta. I don't think May is a player that should be leaning super heavily into the Yoru. I don't think he's that like selfless entry player. I think they should be leaning into making him the centerpiece of their team and kind of letting him just go kill everybody. And I think that's fine. But I do think that they should lean maybe a little bit more into the Breach Teo stuff rather than like KO Teo, or I guess what were they playing elsewhere? I think they played it on Split. No, they didn't play it there. Where did they play it? I thought they played it somewhere else. But regardless, I think they need to play it somewhere else, as well as Art needs to be a teeny tiny little bit better as a caller, I think. I don't think it's necessarily been terrible with him. I think it's just been flashes. Again, playing with a young team, playing with a player that just came out of ranked, and then 2 players that just came up from challengers, I do think it is a little bit difficult with that. So I think the more experience this team gets, the better that they'll be. I don't think they'll necessarily be in the international event contention quite yet. I think that'll be for stage 2 and into champs, but they have looked pretty good, and I would expect them to continue improving. And now onto our last 2 tiers here. I'll do them together because the top team is just solo, so I didn't want to like record separate clips or whatever for 2 different things. But at number 4 here, I have Paper Rex. I think some people would probably expect them to have already been revealed by this point. But I do think historically this team has been really good. there have been some years like 2023 where they performed very poorly at the beginning of the year. They were terrible at lock-in. And I don't think they looked very good at kickoff. I will completely agree with that. I had them number 1 going in. They looked really bad. But I will say I had them number 1 for a reason. They started to play some more normal comps in the offseason. And they continued that kind of into this year. They played double duelist on Lotus still, which I don't really like that much, especially with the Sky. Um, but they are playing Info Sentinels now. They have Forsaken mainly on that role, which I think he's very good at. They have him playing a bunch of different stuff. Like, I think some of their comps are a little bit weird. I think they're leaning into Devi being too heavy of a fragger on this team as well, which I just don't think he is. I think he's very overrated right now. I mean, I've personally thought that for a while. I've always thought he's one of the best players in Pacific. I just didn't think he's like this, like one of the best players on this team. Like, I don't know. Something did have kind of a stinker, especially in their last game against DFM as well. But I'm not super concerned about that run at kickoff for them. I just think it's been like kind of a constant downward trend from this team. And I mean, it looks like roster changes are coming. Signing Patman, I haven't watched much of him, but he seems to be a Jing replacement from everything that I've heard. I don't know when that'll come or if that will come necessarily. I think Jing, if they're looking to play more normal comps, I think Jing is the player to replace, though, because that would allow Patman to play more of that Flash Initiator stuff and then move Forsaken over to a full-time Sentinel role and maybe Devi to a more Info Initiator role, or the other way around with those two guys. I think Forsaken and Devi are very swappable in terms of their roles. I just I really expected more sweeping changes. If they were going to make changes. I would have Mind Freak out. I would probably have Devi out at this point. I would just move forward with Forsaken and something. Maybe move something over to a different role like Sentinel, where I think he would actually be really, really good. And Forsaken play that Info Initiator stuff that he is also very good at. Or maybe just have him play like Duelist even. Like, I think that would work. Get a hard caller in the team as well. I would like that, but I think that'll come more towards the end of the season. I really did not expect them to make more changes. I didn't expect them to make any changes throughout the year. I expect this to kind of be the last ride. If they were bad, then they do a full retooling, which would probably just be around. I mean, if I had to predict at the end of the year, it'll probably be Forsaken and Devi. Just those two left in the team. Maybe Mind Freak as well. Not that I'd agree with that, but if I were to predict. I still think this team has a lot of individual skill. If they do go with Patman, they'll be able to play more normal comps. And I think they'll still be able to catch teams off guard. They'll still be able to make playoffs. And if they do that, they are one of the more experienced teams in playoffs. And they should be very good at that point. So I still believe in this team a little bit, but I am very down on them, like most people are. I don't think that's fully reflected in the power ranking, just because they're more proven than every team below them. Then Gen G, I have at number 3. I think his top 3 is very clear in this region. Just a very solid run from this team. I don't think it was anything that surprised anybody. They beat RRQ, DFM, Talon, and then lost to DRX, which was a little bit of a surprise, and then lost to T1 in the lower final. I think that's pretty much what everyone expected. I think the core 3 of this team looked really good. Charon had a bit of a bounce back from a rough champs run at the end of last year. But Texture, Munchkin both looked really good. Munchkin's calling looked a little bit off, but I think playing with 2 new players, I think that's pretty reasonable. Especially when the 2 players that they lost last year were very good. I think Lakia was a very good supportive utility player, but Yeoman kind of filled in that role. Is a little bit worse on that side, but is definitely a better fragger than Lakia was last year. The only stuff that I would be concerned about is Foxy9 potentially coming out for a different player. I don't know exactly how that's going to fill in terms of roles with this team, whether if they pick up another Sentinel player, if he's going to be able to play a little bit of like flexible stuff like Flash Initiator or like a Yoru as a secondary duelist or something like Foxy 9 is able to do. Um, and then I need Texture to play Yoru a little bit at least because that is kind of his thing where he is that guy that's just going to get sent in and be able to kill everybody when he gets sent in as well. Like maybe Zekken was at kickoff for Sentinels, like Jogamo's been for G2. I think it is a little bit different of a style between Texture and Jogamo, but I think their Yoru might be pretty similar. I think he would be very good at that role, especially with the defensive hopping as well, that he is potentially best in the world at right now, outside of Kangkang. Um, and then the one other thing is, I think there is a chance that this team does make some major role changes, like potentially swapping Munchkin over to Sentinel, Foxy 9 to a full-time like Flash Initiator role. If they did that, I would be pretty concerned with this team. But I think overall they should be fine to stay away from that, I would hope. And they should be a pretty decent team in stage 1. I do want to quickly mention I recorded this before Genji made their roster move of benching Yeoman instead of Foxy 9, which is very interesting to me. I thought Yeoman was one of their better players during kickoff. As long as they sign somebody decent, I've seen some rumors about them re-signing Lakia, which is a move that I would not understand, but they would end up being fine. This shouldn't change where I place them overall. I mean, you can go check out my Twitter. I'll have tweeted if I think anything differently. But overall, I think Genji's in a similar spot, especially if they get Lakia to where they were heading into stage 1. But it is just a little bit weird that they would cut probably their third best player individually from kickoff. Like, you could say, I think Karen was number 1, and then it's like a 3-way tie between him, Texture, and Munchkin. I would definitely give the edge to Texture myself, but maybe some people would think otherwise. Then I would go probably Yeoman than Munchkin, but it is pretty close. I don't know. I feel like if they were just gonna make roster moves, you should have benched Foxy 9. But then, I mean, as I did say in this clip, his role is very unique to this team, and I think it's very important. So overall, again, a weird move. Doesn't really change too much for Genji, especially if they sign somebody that's like 90% of what Yeoman is. I think they should be okay, especially with this team's hit rate on signing these initiator players. I'm not super concerned. Then at number 2, DRX, no surprises there. A little bit of a disappointing run at Bangkok, but I mean, I was just watching Plat Chat as of right now. This will come out plenty after that, so I'll assume some of you have seen it at least. I do think some of the comp changes that they made, like making so many, especially on their better maps, like you was talking about this, I think was a bit of a mistake. But also at the same time, like, they should be fine. They'll be probably the second best team in Pacific. Hyunmin's insane, Freeing's insane. They're 2 new pickups. Bane has looked pretty good. Like, I don't think he's been amazing, but he's been pretty good. Mako's been Mako, obviously. And then Flashback definitely did have a disappointing performance at Bangkok, specifically kind of getting exploited in certain situations, kind of whiffing some of his shots as well. But I think overall, it was a good tournament for DRX to get experience with this young core, with Hyunmin, Freeing, and Bane as well. I guess Bane went with them last year. But yeah, I don't know. The execution wasn't fully there. It was some of what I was talking about with the comp changes and some inexperience and kind of choking with this team. I don't think there's much to talk about really with this team. It's just kind of get more experience. Hopefully you're still in that same form that you were at kickoff, which I would totally expect them to be. Then at number 1, obviously T1, no doubt in my mind. Just won Bangkok. Obviously they are the best team in Pacific. Whether I think they're the best team in the world, like if I was doing a world power ranking, would I have them number 1? I don't think so. Again, Flat Chat was talking about this. T1 probably is not the best team in the world, but they did have an insane run at Bangkok. Izu looks incredible. Buzz looks really good. Sylvan looks a lot better than I expected, which is, I mean, he looks very good. I don't think he's looked great necessarily, but he has had some great maps, some great rounds in there. Stacks looks really good as an individual as well. The calling mm, still concerns me sometimes. Like they're just like there were some rounds. I don't remember if it was necessarily in the final where they were just running around and spawn on their attack side trying to figure out what they wanted to do, which is concerning. And then Meteor has been really good, but there is some stuff that he does sometimes that concerns me. It is a little bit worse than what he was on Genji last year, but it's not significantly worse to where he isn't clearly the best Sentinel player in Pacific right now, in my opinion. So this will be my power rankings. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And now on to my predictions. So yeah, I'll try to make this a little bit quicker than my power rankings, where I do like taking my time to explain everything in the power rankings. But with the predictions, I think these will be pretty easy to do after the power rankings. Also, I just want to say for this video, there aren't going to be any clips for each team. There might be in the future, as long as I don't feel super rushed to get the videos out. I'll be able to say, hey, this clip I want specifically for the video when I'm watching the games each week. But for this one, I don't want to go back through all the games and get all the clips for that. I think that's understandable. But for the first game, DFM versus GE, I think this is pretty cut and dry. DFM should be able to win this. They looked decent. I mean, I had them well over global in my power ranking. I would assume that would make sense for most people. T1 Zeta, I mean, best team against the worst team. Would expect T1 to win that. DRX PaperX, I think there is upset potential here. I think most people would have DRX winning this, but DRX coming off of Bangkok, their first game back, I do think there is a chance for PaperX to take this, but I will still take DRX in this game. Then Talon Secret, I mean, this matchup has happened so much. It's just the battle of mid. I believe Talon has got the best of Secret in a majority of their matchups. Let me take a look. Yeah, Talon won. Last time Secret beat Talon was Pacific Kickoff last year. So, yeah, I'm going to take Talon in this game. I mean, I would have taken them anyways, but I just wanted to look at the matchup since I've seen it so much. Genji, Boom. I think Genji should be taking this. I wouldn't really expect them to lose to Boom here, especially like having so much time to prep after losing in that last game. And I mean, if you're concerned that Boom's going to win bind against them, which I am not super concerned, they could probably just ban it and be fine. I don't know. Like I think they'll be better on all the other maps really than Boom. Then Nongshim and RRQ. I think I'm going to take Nongshim here, just because in that matchup with these teams, Nongshim's going to be able to kind of keep that pace from their last match, and I think maybe be able to pick some better maps for them against RRQ. I don't know. This is a little bit of a weird game because I think this is definitely the closest game of the week. Maybe, I mean, TRX PaperX is the best game in terms of the two best teams, but I think this is the most interesting because I think it'll kind of set the tone for the rest of the season for either of these teams. And it being that big of a match, I don't think RRQ's going to be able to handle the pressure as they haven't been in the past. So these will be my picks for week one. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. As well